For over 4 centuries, a dark chapter unfolded in human history: the Transatlantic Slave Trade. It was a period marked by unimaginable cruelty, where millions of Africans were forcibly uprooted from their homes and subjected to the horrors of slavery across the Atlantic. This triangular trade route, connecting Europe, Africa, and the Americas, left an indelible mark on the world. The trade not only decimated African populations and societies, but also fueled the economies of colonial powers and shaped the social fabric of the Americas. Its legacy continues to resonate today, influencing global conversations about race, identity, and justice. Join me now as we delve into the depths of this dark chapter, exploring its origins, its devastating impact, and the stories of resilience and resistance that emerged from the shadows of oppression. The origins of this abhorrent trade can be traced back to the burgeoning economies of Europe. The discovery of the New World and its promise of wealth, sugar, tobacco, cotton, fueled an insatiable demand for labor. European powers, seeking to maximize their profits, turned to the African continent. The slave trade was a complex network, often facilitated by collaborations with certain African kingdoms and elites. These alliances, driven by power struggles and economic incentives, saw African traders exchanging captives for goods like textiles, guns, and alcohol. Entire communities were torn apart, families shattered, as individuals were branded, shackled, and marched to the coast, destined for a life of forced labor in a land they had never known. The journey from the African interior to the coastal forts was often perilous. Many died along the way, succumbing to exhaustion, disease, or the brutality of their captors. Those who survived this initial ordeal faced an even more harrowing journey across the Atlantic, a journey that would become synonymous with suffering and death. This trade wasn't just about economics. It was underpinned by a belief in European superiority, a dangerous ideology that justified the enslavement of an entire race of people. Imagine being crammed into the bowels of a wooden vessel, hundreds of souls squeezed together like cattle. The stench of human waste and fear thicken the air. This was the grim reality of the Middle Passage, the journey across the Atlantic that would claim the lives of millions. For those who survived the horrors of the Middle Passage, arrival in the Americas brought little respite from their ordeal. As the ships docked in ports like Charleston, Havana, and Salvador, the dehumanization continued. Stripped naked, their bodies poked and prodded, African men, women, and children were assessed for their strength and value. Families, torn apart during capture, rarely found each other again. The auction block became a stage for unimaginable cruelty, where human beings were bought and sold like livestock. Branded with hot irons, stripped of their names and identities, Africans were forced to assimilate into a foreign world. They were given new names, often reflecting the whims of their owners, and thrust into the brutal realities of plantation life. Under the relentless Caribbean sun or the humid heat of the American South, African slaves toiled from dawn till dusk, their bodies broken by the backbreaking labor. The whip, a constant threat, served as a cruel reminder of their subjugation. Overseers, driven by profit and a sense of racial superiority, ruled with an iron fist. Yet, even in this environment of unimaginable hardship, the spirit of resistance flickered. Africans clung to their cultures, their traditions, their languages, small acts of defiance that preserved their humanity. They sang songs of their homeland, their voices carrying across the fields, keeping their traditions and stories alive. They practiced their faiths in secret, blending African beliefs with Christianity, finding solace and strength in spirituality. The average lifespan of a slave on a Caribbean sugar plantation was a mere 7 years after their arrival. But even within this system designed to crush their spirits, Africans found ways to resist. They formed communities, sharing what little food and resources they had. Families, if they were lucky enough to be together, were crammed into these cramped quarters, their lives devoid of privacy or dignity. Malnutrition and disease were rife, claiming the lives of countless slaves. Medical care, when it was provided, was often rudimentary and inadequate. Men, women, and even children as young as 5 or 6 years old were forced to work the fields, their bodies slowly broken by the relentless labor. Housing for slaves was often nothing more than crude huts, poorly constructed and offering little protection from the elements. Life on the plantation was a relentless cycle of toil and brutality. The workday began before sunrise and stretched long into the night, driven by the insatiable demand for cash crops. The desire for freedom burned brightly in the hearts of those enslaved. Across the Americas, acts of resistance challenged slavery. From defiance to organized rebellions, the enslaved resisted. Maroon communities in the Caribbean became havens of resistance. They waged guerrilla warfare, inspiring hope. Figures like Nanny of the Maroons became symbols of resistance. In Haiti, Toussaint Louverture led a successful slave revolt. These uprisings challenged the foundations of the slave trade. Their courage inspired the fight for abolition. Harriet Tubman became an icon of courage and compassion. The abolition of the transatlantic slave trade was a pivotal moment in human history. It was the culmination of decades of work by abolitionists who risked their lives to end slavery. Figures like William Wilberforce dedicated their lives to ending the trade. His speeches and campaigning led to the abolition of the slave trade in 1807. Other nations followed suit, enacting their own legislation to outlaw the trade. However, the abolition of the trade did not mean the end of slavery itself. It would take many more years before slavery was finally abolished in the Americas. The legacy of the transatlantic slave trade continues to shape our world today. The economic disparities, racial prejudices, and social injustices are a direct result of this dark chapter. It is our duty to remember this history and work towards a future where such atrocities are never repeated. By understanding the roots of racism and inequality, we can better address the challenges that we face today. We have journeyed together through a harrowing period, confronting the darkest impulses of humanity. We've witnessed the greed that fueled the transatlantic slave trade, the unimaginable cruelty inflicted upon millions, and the enduring legacy of this horrific chapter. But we've also witnessed the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. We've seen the courage of those who resisted, the compassion of those who fought for abolition, and the enduring hope that fueled their struggle. It's a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable darkness, the human spirit can endure. Let us honor the memory of those who suffered and perished by learning from the mistakes of the past. Let us strive to create a world where every individual is treated with dignity and respect, where the chains of prejudice are broken, and where the echoes of this dark chapter serve as a reminder of the importance of justice and equality for all. That's a wrap on today's journey through history. Leave a comment with your thoughts and be sure to subscribe for more fascinating stories from the past.